Welcome back to Tug of Heart. Wow, what a little hopefully we can kind of pull it together in this second part two, not second part two, but in this second stream of thought, which is part two of loneliness. Um, Lori had she declared just an epiphany, a moment of brilliance in which she had this all figured out. And so we're going to go ahead and let Lori clarify for all of us commoners exactly what types of loneliness and which ones are good for us. Lori, welcome.
Welcome. Glad like the intro. Let me explain to you now.
You have some splaining to do.
I have some explaining to do. That's our hometown talk, just so you guys know. We're not we poke fun at only ourselves here when the mics are on. Anyways, so
Great disclaimer, Lori. Great disclaimer.
okay, so we ended our last talk with you pretty confidently and beautifully suggesting that you haven't felt lonely in a long time. And so I thought, okay, let me tear that, like just have throw a couple cannons at those walls and let's see how they hold up, right?
Let's do this. Yeah, I love it.
Fortitude, which I always enjoy doing with you, anyways, because you're a good sport, and also I think that we can stand to learn because you are. I quickly jotted while we were getting set up here a couple of things, and when I was jotting them down, I was like, meh, yeah, Leroy kind of fits the mark for each of these. So we had identified that loneliness is more that sense of discomfort, of isolation, and wanting to kind of do something about it, to remove it and reconnect. It's a feeling of wanting connection versus being alone, as you said, which could be a choice, and so much wonderful things can happen in that space. Now, I just wanted to take it the next level when you were saying about not feeling lonely for a long time. Good for you, first off. And I wanted to take a moment to point out that the first thing you did mention was your marriage, which I agree. You guys, good couple and well adjusted, but I think that it doesn't end there. I think there's more to being interconnected than that single or singular relationship. And so when it comes to loneliness, there's different categories, I guess, of it. And like these dimensions that loneliness can fall into. And it's the intimate, a relational, and a collective. And so I'll just go over them real quick, tell you what I'm getting at, and then I'm going to start hammering you with some questions. The intimate would or lack thereof would be an emotional loneliness of like your confidant, your bestie, your intimate partner, right? And that comes from that bond, that close bond. And of course, it's an affectionate relationship and the person you trust. And then relationally, that's your friends, your buddies, companionship, and like your general support from those people. And then the third I'm talking about is your collective. That's just the community, your network of people that kind of share your purpose and your interests. And I do see that you have a strong foothold in each of those. But for other people still finding themselves, people who have moved, people whose lives have changed, especially within the last couple of years, let's say, without a high level of connection in each of those three areas, people can feel lonely. It just takes one falling short. You could have a happy marriage and somebody may, not be thriving in terms of friendship, and they're going to experience loneliness, even if they had a perfect marriage or any of the other ones. And when we feel lonely, I was going to ask you to start with, how would we identify like what's missing? Because the funny thing about something missing in terms of relationally is a lot of times we don't always even have the ability to name it until we encounter it, right? You didn't know there was such a connection as Joanne before there was a Joanne, for instance. So in terms of like having a friendship, your community, and a spouse or a partner, or the most intimate uh, interconnection. How do we know if we're having, we know the feeling of loneliness kind of, but how would we know what direction it's coming from? That's my first question.
I think to answer that, and we're talking about marital, um, being a facet of this little equation we're doing. I think more important than knowing where it comes from is knowing where it doesn't come from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, in the presence of my wife, it's what I don't feel.
Okay.
I mean, the things that are uncomfortable in a room, going to sleep alone, lonely, it's probably not even a very well thought out. It probably has a lot more to do with just a knee jerk reaction, but it's what I don't feel when she's around.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
It's the hunger that just isn't in those times when you're together.
Correct.
Or the thirst, whatever you want to call it, but it's not that. So the other thing is, I guess the next question would be, I do think that you satisfy the three pretty well. Just out of the blue, I want to just go to the collective. So where you have a network or a community of people around you that are like, let's say they share the same sense of purpose and interest. Okay, it doesn't have to be like-minded, but just that you, like, for you, what comes to mind immediately is the camping. Is that enough? Because aren't there plenty of people that you could go camping with and you just as soon be alone?
There was a poem that, what was it? Oh, there was a poem called "That Man Is a Success," and this poem was hanging on a bathroom wall, and we lived on Avocet.
We only reading material when before phones was that or the shampoo bottle. I always say
that's it, right? So when we're living on Avocet,
spent years reading that.
we're in what was the name of that county? Oh, I can't. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, but we're what? How old are we? We're 6, 7 years old.
Yeah, it was in Arizona, right? Or Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah.
So we're living there, and it's like that man is a success, and it talks about this and that, and writing a perfect poem, perfect poppy, blah blah blah. And then it says, looks for the best in others and gives the best he has. And so as we get older, we start to appreciate people for different reasons. Some for what they teach us, and some for what they convince us of that we're already in possession of.
Ooh.
So
yeah.
So it starts to become less important. We can find the silver lining, so to speak, even with some people that could take them or leave them, so to speak. I'm very fortunate. I've got a good group. Maybe I'm making better choices as I get older.
Or are you more accepting? Because I find.
Or am I the bad choice?
Right. Or are we paying them to take care of you? And you don't know. So everybody seems agreeable now.
All completely plausible.
You know what's funny? Because I do find personally that with age, I encounter less strangers anywhere. Like I'd gone with Lisa yesterday for pre-op, my neighbor. And while she'd gone in, I'm talking to an older man and, from across the room. And by the time she came back, I've taken the chair next to him. We've exchanged numbers, but something about getting older that it makes you more distinct in who you are as a person. But at the same time, with age and more experience, it gives you something more in common with such a diverse the diverse group of people you have commonalities with becomes more.
Well, I mean, from day one, we're garnering, we're collecting new experiences every single day. So the likelihood of sharing something, in common really gets highly probable after about the age of, say, 40.
Right, right.
We've been through a lot. We've lost loved ones. So now it's just a matter of how quickly.
More overlap.
That's right. How quickly can you find the commonality? Because if you sit there, it's kind of like speed dating with a stranger. I mean, except you're not trying to go on a date. You're just trying to find out, what do we have in common? How'd you get here? Oh, I came on the bus. Oh, I drove. Where do you work? Oh, I'm in the tech field. Oh, I'm a plumber. It's just, you start going. Do you like cooking? No. Do you like eating? Yeah, I do too. We're just best friends.
We both eat to survive.
We just became best friends.
Actually, that's what we started talking about was soul food, and then it went from that to matanzas and the southern cooking, Southwest Southern cooking, and some fine Southern cooking, if you know what I mean. Like we were comparing, like we both know exactly what we're talking about. It's the same language, even though we grew up two different places.
You know what? I was talking to your husband yesterday. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that the older we get, the more we recognize the similarities in religion, the similarities in, I remember, I never thought it would be a part of my life, but I was fortunate enough to have a nice long trip to Hawaii, mm-hmm. to, a few of the islands, and went to a luau. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here checking out the luau, and I'm like, this ain't no luau. This is a matanza.
That's what I was saying with this guy. And he's like, my mama could do this. And I'm like, oh, I skinned a rabbit on a clothesline. Oh, yeah? We ate muskrat. And it turned into this like, oh, yeah? My granny shot a guinea with a BB gun and cooked it. And it turned into that. From that, it's like, how have we not been best friends all our life? But it happens so fast, right?
Your husband called me yesterday and he asked me, he was like, oh, are you okay? This, that, and the other. I said, man, I'm glad I got you on the phone. I said, talk to me about the Indian breakfast dish with eggs and masala. And, it's got like 15 different. He's like, oh, the egg masala, breakfast of champions. I'm like, tell me what's in it. He's like, well, you got to have plenty of eggs, lots and lots of eggs.
It's torta, right?
And then you put in, the red curry powder, and I'm like, are we talking about torta?
Actually, because I make him that, and
I know he said he loves it.
No, but he calls it egg masala, or he calls it chili egg.
Right. So
can you make chili egg? But it's a Spanish dish, but he doesn't know it's not Indian.
Getting back to loneliness and kind of like finding the common thread. I mean, as we get older, it gets a whole lot easier. So you're asking me these questions about the people we keep around us. And mm-hmm. it's our own willingness to maybe reach a little further, reach a little deeper, and ask a few more questions. And, what a great segue, Lori. And I'm like, where are you going with this? And the truth is, you're giving the recipe for combating loneliness.
Well, I'm not done there, so let's hold off on the accolades here, because.
But wait, there's more.
I wanted to add that we more than we know what to ask to find commonality. I think a big attribute with age is we're confident it's there. No matter who we encounter, we're confident there's commonality, because it's been proven over and over again, where the younger might be more suspicious because they've not yet had that happen, where they found something in common. There's a better chance when you're young, you've each gone your own way before you found what was same, right? Now, to take you into a little bit darker territory. One of the things that's not mentioned, because I was telling you more or less like kind of a secular approach to loneliness. Can you tell me your thoughts about a spiritual loneliness, and which is what I would consider hell? To me, hell is spiritual loneliness. But if you're feeling up to it, and if you're not, then be brave and do it anyways. A time that you have experienced that and what you gleaned from it.
Okay. Super cool question. Easy to answer for me. Our youth, you and I collectively, grew up in close proximity to one another in the beginning. And yet we couldn't be a whole lot more different. We're twins, same parents, same address, same school, very different experiences.
A couple times people thought we were identical boy twins.
Or girl twins.
When I had that boy haircut for a while.
But you're talking about spiritual loneliness. I think that for me, because I mean, we had completely different relationships with mom. Is that safe to say? That's fair.
Yeah. It's known.
It's just
Public
different.
known. Yeah.
And I was really aware of my limitations. When I say my limitations, when you're 4 or 5 years old, 5 for sure, Whitesville Elementary, Miss White, pianos. I mean, I was really aware that I couldn't alter what happened day to day.
Right. You could not manipulate life.
Right. I mean,
God. Yeah.
I ate what was put in front of me. I wore what was in my closet. I went out when I was allowed to go out. I really didn't feel like I had freedom.
That autonomy we were talking about.
Yeah. I did not have that. So spiritually, that's probably where I found spirituality, because that's all I had. That was kind of my escape. Was this, we talk about that prayer in perpetuity, that it's just there. It's just always giving something. And you kind of walk by it in your head. Imagine that you walk by, and you just kind of drop a few things in the bucket. Right. You go about your day, you come back, you drop a few more things. It's just this ongoing. So as we talk about loneliness, I mean, this was like, without that, I probably would have felt very alone. And even though my questions weren't answered, I had somebody that was there to ask them to,
And you felt
I directed them.
You felt secure in that?
Yeah, because it was mine. That's mine.
You felt sure. That is the reason I ask, is because it took me all the way until Dad's death before I could pursue anything spiritual in a way where I felt there was a possibility of a response. Because I was spiritually lonely all the way till near 30, because I was like, I thought I wasn't included in that. Because everybody seemed to have this kind of interaction going on with God or prayer or whatever, and they talked about it so naturally and normal, like all this stuff is just happening. And so if you think about it from I felt like I was on the outside looking in. I spent most of my I prayed, but I spent most of my first 30 years by praying was begging, because I never heard an answer. And I'm like, won't you include me? Won't you let me be one? When we were very young, I used to pray, can I just be an apple picker, but just let me into heaven anyways? Can I just work for everybody else? Because people are like, oh, I talk to Jesus, I do this, and I'd never heard anything. So I had this certain feeling I was out. I had missed something that everyone else was talking about, because they're talking about conversation type stuff. And that I wasn't doing that.
Funny story. Let me jog your memory. Do you remember when we rode in the camper shell of Dad's green International pickup and we were going to California?
Uh-huh.
Do Do you remember that?
Well, I remember many times. Were we in the back?
We were living in Fox Glen,
Okay, and so what happened?
and Dad had put the little bunk beds at the front of the camper shell. I
Mhm.
slept on the bottom. You had the top.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do
We
remember.
made the trip. This is
Were we with
different.
Grandma?
What's that?
Grandma?
Yeah, I think she went with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so we went out there to Santa Monica, and on the way there we stopped somewhere in Sedona, and me and all my brilliance, because I never got to get anything, or I certainly didn't feel like I got to. But this was like we're on a family trip. Go inside, find some little knickknack. We must have been at a church or something, because I purchased a little book called How to Talk to God.
What?
Yeah, I'm like 5 years old,
Uh-huh.
6 years. I mean, of course I could read at that time.
Yeah.
And it's like How to Talk to God. And every time I read it, I'd fall asleep. And I'm like, okay, so this is how you talk to him. You just go to bed. You know?
What?
I got it.
I'm
This is
good at
very
it.
clear. Every time I read the book, I go to sleep. Like, apparently I'm talking to him when I'm in my sleep.
Oh, I wish that happened. I suffered years. Why didn't you tell me? I suffered years thinking I had so many sleepless nights of begging. Why won't you talk to me? Why is everybody saying they're having conversations and I've never heard you? Can't I hear you, please?
Lori, I swear the title of the book was How to Talk to God. I'd start reading. I couldn't get through page 1. I'd go to sleep. So I just accepted the fact that that's how you talk to him. You just read this little book. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. You'd go to bed, and in there was a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
Funny story, though, right? So, Lori, this whole loneliness,
Uh-huh.
and now we're like at a new level. And you said that you were going to talk about the types of loneliness.
Right.
And so clean that up for us a little bit.
Okay, so when I and I'll clean it up by putting you on the spot a little bit again, because one of the things that I would think about, we started this talk about what happens when you also lose somebody. And so are people forever lonely if they lose their number one? That confidant, their spouse, their beloved. Or do people survive beyond that, out of perpetual loneliness?
If it's your number one, I have to ask you a question. Are you really going to stop talking to him?
No.
Right.
The guy I spoke to yesterday, as a matter of fact, told me he talks to his wife every day when he wakes up. He talks to her pictures. And I
So is he
think
talking to her, or is he talking to himself?
to her, that's his experience. And I mean, that can't be taken from him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What anybody else believes doesn't matter. That's his living experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only one we didn't really talk about was in terms of friendship. You're a good friend, perhaps a better friend than I am. So you have had really good friends in your life. You've always been an excellent friend. You've kept friendships for years, and you respond like a friend should. So to the young that have not had success in that area, what would you recommend in terms of kind of a cure for loneliness through friendship? Because at the same time, you don't seek friendships just to squash loneliness. You have to be in a friendship for the sake of the friendship itself. So how do you balance that, where it's the real deal, but you also can read the sign of loneliness as maybe a little nudge in that direction? But you don't want it to just be about not being lonely, or else you're using people, and or you're not developing mature relationships.
Man, I'm mildly stumped. I really don't know how to answer that, because
So there's 12 questions.
I think as I've gotten older, you know, relief is the is the truest of celebrations, when you can offer relief. So it's kind of a double-edged thing. There is it has to do with like just an awareness. When you approach somebody who is broken or certainly damaged, I'm not going to say broken because none of us we shouldn't look at ourselves as broken, but we're going through something. We've taken on a little bit of damage. The more that we can kind of realize ourselves, our own needs, and you're just kind of more aware of basically the temperature of your heart, so to speak. When you help somebody go through something and you're just maybe you're just listening and they're just rambling, there's a tremendous amount of relief for them in somebody just sitting there, not on their phone, but just sitting there and listening. But it is so good for you.
Right.
Because
right.
Basically what you're doing is these little instances, and I don't live this way. I'm not trying to say like, behold, look what I've done. I mean,
Right.
that's not what I'm saying. But when you do that, what you're doing is you're making a little deposit into your institution of relief. And it's those moments where you were there for somebody that very unwittingly keep our own loneliness at bay, because we meant something to somebody. And maybe that's how we keep loneliness at bay, by meaning something, by being something to someone. And sometimes that's just presence. And if you've got words of encouragement, or you're able to bring a sandwich with you, I mean, do it. Because these are the things. It's like these little imperceptible advances in our own battle with loneliness. I say advances because those things hold us. There are other times when we would probably feel down and this and that, but they are offset by the feelings, the good feelings, the warmth, the temperature of our heart when we do things for other people.
I love that. So in other words, our well-being is connected to seeing other people to their own well-being.
Yes.
And it solves in both directions at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because you know what? The other point that you make there is that nobody said that friendships have to be 20-year friendships. You could meet a friend for 5 minutes and it has impacted your loneliness somewhat, right? You don't need it if you don't make it that like where your mind is just fixed and your heart more so is just like not fixed, but fixated on this idea that when will I stop being lonely? When can I have a friend for 10 years? But it's in moments that alleviates that. Like you said, little deposits.
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
And seeing loneliness is just kind of a call, the tug of your heart, I guess, to be proactive in the world, in something, in others, to get involved in something outside yourself.
You know, it's funny, if we were to sit here and just talk about, Lori, we're not going to talk about tug of heart. We're not going to talk about distress. We're not going to talk about impaled hearts. What we're going to talk about is self-help. Everything we talk about is about what we can do for somebody else to benefit ourselves.
Yes.
So it is with tremendous greed that we should go out and help.
Right.
Because
you can't serve anybody without something in you being served as well, right?
Mm-hmm. That was good.
I wanted to add, I don't know how we are for time, but I'm going to add.
Got like 10 minutes, Lori.
Okay, I just wanted to add that I was thinking of this with something that you were saying, but like, just in case anybody is suffering from loneliness, and we're talking a little flippantly about being lonely, but truly, if anybody is suffering from loneliness, you can call Leroy first of all.
Lori, that is insane that you said that, because I was about to write down, and I had thought of this after we got off the last podcast. No, 2 podcasts ago. We were talking about self-pity, and I said, you know what? If we mean it, we should be accessible. Yes, you actually can call. You actually can. And I literally was about to write this down so I wouldn't forget to mention it, but I had thought of this like 2 episodes ago.
Okay, you win. But anyways,
no, you win. I mean, you're picking up on my thoughts here.
If you notice, I was volunteering you because you're a little bit better about answering the phone. But also, so anybody who is lonely, like reach out. You can call Leroy, but if he's the kind of person you just wouldn't have as a friend, got it, understandable. And a secondary thing that you can do is remember that loneliness is when being alone is painful. And one of the easiest things to change about any situation is, as we've said, our perception. Change your mind, change your heart. And it's not that you want to kind of fool yourself into anything, but you also do have to survive sometimes alone in this world. And so when you do find yourself isolated in a way you don't want to be, remember, if you're suffering loneliness, a quick method to get yourself a little more time till you get that plan to connect with others is to then say, I choose to be alone and use this time for good. Because just by repurposing the time, you've made the time meaningful, and you've also removed some of the suffering because you're using it to somehow become more as you plan to reconnect with others. And then make that plan and call Leroy. When this plays, will you put in the comments your phone number, Leroy?
Of course.
Okay. And I think I'll leave it at that for me. He's funny. He's funnier even than he is on air. Because each time we actually come on air,
you know what I would actually prefer, Lori, since you said that, and I thought about this beforehand, being that I already deal with the paparazzi on such a regular basis. Okay, no, I don't. But that sounded really good. If you need to speak to either one of us, I assure you, send us a private message to Tug of Heart, open forum. Probably not extremely difficult to find a link to our personal profile page on Facebook from Tug of Heart.
Right.
You will find us under the administrator column. And send us a private message. I assure you, we'll call you back timely.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing this. And if there is something in my possession that I can give away, especially if it's time, words, an ear, yeah, you pretty much got that. So yeah, feel free to send a message with your number. We'll call you back.
And also, if you want to just like join a list of just being available, you don't feel lonely, but you're like, I have extra, then let us know as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So final thoughts about loneliness.
Understand it. Just because loneliness is a place we don't like to frequent doesn't mean it doesn't have a benefit.
Right, exactly.
Clarity comes sometimes in our loneliness. I mean, who among us hasn't said, it's only when I was all alone that I found out who was really there for me.
Right.
I found out the relationships that were unsavory. I found the cheap metallic or plastic relationships, fake, manufactured. And then I found the ones that weren't there, but they checked in. Authentic, Not all the time, but you know what? Those are the relationships that get you through the darkness. The
Yeah.
ones that are just there. The ones that you call and you haven't talked to them. Well, as we get older, it starts to mean different things. 10 years went by. Hey, what's going on? Great. How you doing? Oh, you got divorced. Oh man, I'm sorry. I mean, but don't be overly demanding,
Right.
I guess. I sound like I'm giving advice, and what I'm telling you or what I'm saying is what has helped me.
Yeah. And I would add to that, you know, if you suspect somebody's lonely, you don't need to just like burst through a door and say, ta-da, here to work on that loneliness, but check on people in a subtle way, you know? Uh, Again, during this time, since the pandemic and everything else, and people are, you know, we're still in tough times and headed for a new kind of tough. Check on your neighbor. Doesn't mean you have to surrender any of your own belongings and nothing like that. But like Leroy said, time, worth. Just swing by and be like, hey, I hadn't seen you out. Just making sure everything's okay. You know, how you doing? How you holding up? Because a lot of times, people who are lonely, it can be a vicious cycle because there's a lot of shame attached to being lonely for a lot of people, and it makes them less likely to reach out because they begin to feel something about themselves and that loneliness that prevents them to reaching out to people.
Lori, thank you. Great topic, great experience.
Yeah.
Like us, share us, contact us, write to us, question us, teach us. We're all in this together.
Mm-hmm. So until next time, to officially do what he says, you can like Tug of Heart here, the Open Forum, or Strong Island on Facebook. We will see where we're headed next week. Let's see what happens this week. Until then, farewell.
Adios.